Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 15th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk this morning will be Ms. Karen Robertson. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Question period sign-up sheet is by the table on the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to join meetings electronically, and this morning I want to welcome Councillor Armstrong, who's joining us electronically. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Robertson, but I just want to inform Council that I have to do an interview at 9:15 and another one at 11, so I'll be handing the chair over to whoever wishes to step forward and volunteer quickly and firstly. And I'm just looking at Councillor Thorpe because he didn't look at me carefully, and Councillor Armstrong is coming electronically, so I'm going to suggest that she might not be the best person to chair given the electronic nature of her connection this morning. Thank you very much, Councillor Thorpe. We have no late items, Ms. Robertson. A motion for adoption of the agenda. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Eastmere. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. We have no presentations. We have no delegations. But we do have a number of reports today. I want to welcome many members of staff from the city here this morning. Appreciate your attendance. The first 7A is Clean BC Better Homes Rebates Funding 2023. Mr. Lindsay, good morning. Please.
Good morning, Your Worship, Council. As you mentioned, we have a report to seek some direction on this morning. I'm joined by Ms. Pan, who's our Manager of Sustainability, and I'm just going to ask her to review that report with you and go over the highlights. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. So I'm happy to just give a very high-level overview of the program. The request is to seek council support to increase the funding to support the continuation of the Clean BC Better Homes top-up rebates that we provide to our homeowners. And as you can see in the background, that we have been providing these rebates since April 2020, and that this provides additional rebates to the Clean BC provincial rebates. So, for residents in Nanaimo, they could cover a substantial portion of their energy retrofits. And this participation rate has been steadily increasing since we launched the program. And if you recall, this time last year, we actually came to council, and council directed us to basically give an additional $100,000 to this program. And then we just got informed by the provincial staff that, that money is anticipated to run out probably in May or June this year because we are seeing unprecedented participation. The rate of participation for the first 3 months of 2023 is triple the rate from this time last year. And this is at pace of the provincial trend that we're seeing, and despite inflation, despite all the other challenges, and we're seeing our residents taking action. So we're hoping that we'll be able to support the program until the end of the year. And we have budget already planned in our financial plan for the remainder of the program for the first 3 months of next year. So it's really just bridging the gap between, probably summer till the end of the year. So yeah, happy to answer any questions, but it's really encouraging. And this is actually reducing a substantial amount of greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings. And if you look at where we need to be in terms of the emissions, we need to reduce, get to net zero by 2050. Over the next 27 years, we need to reduce on average 3,300 tons each year. And what we're seeing is this kind of get us to about it reduces 20% of the annual reduction that is needed. So it's a significant portion that we currently really don't have a lot of other tools to really use to get to this kind of impact. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley's first out of the gate this morning.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious about what the recognition is that Clean BC gives for the city's contribution. I just finished my third home energy retrofit in the fall, and so I would have been eligible for the heat pump, the electrical upgrade, for sure. But when I saw this on the agenda, I looked it up in my email to see what came up. And there was no recognition from the city. There was no acknowledgement that I received any money from the city. So I responded to the email and asked, did I get these grants? They recognize BC Hydro, Fortis BC, and Clean BC in the emails and in the information that I received. Now, I know I saw it somewhere when I was doing my research on how much money I was going to get back. But I think that if we're putting money into this program, we should be asking Clean BC to recognize the city of Nanaimo for the grants that we're giving our citizens to do this work. And I would recommend to citizens that they do this. I also took advantage of the federal grants to put solar panels on my house, and all winter I've been receiving bills from Fortis BC and BC Hydro saying, don't pay us, we owe you money. So I recommend this. The savings, the cost savings that I've had just this year in my gas bill and my hydro bill make it seem very worth it, in combination with lowering my greenhouse gas outputs. But I'd like to know, do we have in our agreement with Clean BC that there's recognition that the city provided these grants, or did I get my grants? I'd like to know. Because I didn't see anything from Clean BC that I received anything from the city of Nanaimo, and zero acknowledgement.
If I may, Councillor Manley, that's a very good feedback. I think that we can convey to the provincial staff. And I do know that they list all the municipalities that offer incentives on their website. So if you're searching for rebates, and you put in, which city you belong to, and it will pull up. But I don't know once you are accessing the incentive or whether you're actually getting any recognition. So I think that's something that we can raise. There's opportunity to do that. And I think a lot of people find it through our website and when they're doing the incentive research on the Clean BC website.
Yeah, just being a busy guy, seeing the basic program, I didn't have time to dig in to a lot of stuff. I just knew I'm going to do this, A, B, C, D, get it done, try to get the reports in, and not necessarily fish around too long. But I think that, it would be fair to be asking for some kind of recognition for the contribution to municipalities, so that people know where their tax dollars are being spent and how the city is helping them reduce their greenhouse gases.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you. Thank you so much. I'm very much in favor of this and really pleased to see that the citizens are taking advantage. I have a bit of confusion because the next report, of course, just a few pages later, talks again about the homes rebate program continuation. So I was struggling a little bit about what you're asking for from this report versus the next report. So I was wondering if you could just explain a little bit further about where the money's coming from, because what you're suggesting is that we go from 66,900 to 126,900. So where is that money coming from? I'm always concerned about the tax increase and so forth. So if you could explain that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and Laura can add us through the chair. So that is being funded from the Climate Action Reserve Fund, and that reserve fund is basically receiving funding from both, taxation and also the money that we get from the province. And it's a program called a Local Government Climate Action Program. So every year that we receive money from the province dedicated to climate action. So I think that's going to be the source of the funding for the additional $60,000 we're asking for.
So through you again, Mr. Mayor, just the fact is we're not actually raising the tax rate to fund this. This is coming from reserve funds.
I think that's correct.
Just what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further questions. We do have a motion. Someone moved, Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Manley. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Kesselbrock?
Through you, Chair, to staff. I'm just curious in terms of the increased uptake. I've been listening on Spotify, and there is quite a lot of advertising for the rebate program for heat pumps and that through the provincial government that they've been putting out. And I'm just curious, did we do anything different on the city's end in terms of seeing the increased uptake, or is it just sort of getting in people's awareness more and they're accessing the program?
Through the chair, last year we have done quite a lot of outreach and promotion of the incentive. You know, we have staff at the public events and at the night market, and then there is a lot of interest, and we're also getting phone calls. I believe also we have done social media campaigns, and then there's just, I think, a wider recognition now that the program has been in place for a number of years, and maybe, you know, people through looking at their neighbors and friends and having done this and gone through the process, it usually takes several months to a year to complete the project. So we're seeing that uptake not just in Nanaimo but in many other jurisdictions as well. So there is probably just a wider recognition, awareness in general.
Great, thank you. Yeah, no, it's very encouraging numbers, and just looking at you know, our draws on the climate action initiative reserve that we have, and you know, I think during the action planning part and budget, we might have to consider increasing what we put in there so that we can continue to be moving forward these encouraging programs. So thanks so much for the work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other hands or speakers. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the Brecken Dock Replacement Project Cost Update.
Good morning, Your Worship. Do you want me to speak to this?
Good morning, Mr. Harding, joining us.
Good morning, sir.
Nice to see you.
So I'm away from you today. Apparently, I'm a place where Mr. Lindsay believes I buy all my business attire, so I'm away for a little bit. So we have a report in front of us, an information report of an update. A project we had some approval for last year. There's been a number of changes, of course, with the costing, but also a little bit with the design to make it work for the paddling club and also the Coast Guard, auxiliary Coast Guard station there. This is just information report on the project. It's proceeding now as we would like, and look for completion later this year. If there's any questions I can answer, and I also think Ms. I'm not sure if one of my other staff is in the audience there. Charlotte, I believe, is in the audience also to answer a question from you too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harding. Are there any questions about the Brecken Dock replacement? They're a very satisfied bunch this morning, Mr. Harding. You're off the hook.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you and Ms. Davis this morning. The next item is the Community Resiliency Investment Program, Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports Program. Chief Doyle, and I'm just going to turn the chair over to Councillor Thorpe now.
Good morning, Your
Good morning,
Worship,
Chief.
Council. Just here to introduce Assistant Chief David Dales, and today he's going to speak to you on the Community Resilience Investment Program, otherwise known as our Fire Smart program, and this grant that we're applying for.
Good morning, Worship and Council. I'll focus on the staff report. Chief Jeff Whiting gives his regrets. He's currently doing interviews for our August intake of our 20 firefighters, so in his replacement. I'll focus on the overview. The purpose of the report is to talk about the Fire Smart previous grant application spends and our ask for 2023. We're basically asking Council if you'd like to support our ask of our current spend. We're going to ask for $68,000 next year. The focus of that $68,000 is an expansion of what we've done in the previous years in terms of community resilience building. And then the new ask is going to be for standing up a structural protection unit, phase 1 of a 4-year plan through funding through the Fire Smart program. And if there's any questions.
I see Councillor Perino first. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just a quick question through you. So we have to authorize that you're asking for more funding from the UBCM.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Yes.
And then
It's just endorsement kind of thing. Is that right?
yeah, endorse it, and then also the amendment to the financial plan. The financial implications for the financial plan. If the grant is successful, then we have to amend the financial plan.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Council, any other questions, or is somebody prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Hemmons moving both recommendations. I think we can take them together. And a seconder, Councillor Eastmuir, seconding. Any other discussion or questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Seeing none, that passes.
Your Worship, Council, thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Doyle, I believe you're up for the next item as well.
Yes, Chair. Good morning again. Here to present to you on the frontline engine purchase for station number 2, the Fire Rescue Master Plan. Thanks for having me here today. I'm here to advise Council that the budget for the purchase of a new frontline fire engine to facilitate the addition of 20 new firefighters at Station 2 in 2025 as part of the Fire Master Plan has increased by $341,318 from the original cost estimate of $1,224,300. This is inclusive of one-time equipment costs, which add up to a total of $1,565,618. Specifically, $141,050 will be needed in 2023 to fund the deposit required to place the order. The remaining $200,268 will be needed in 2024 when the fire engine is delivered. This increase will be funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. In regards to the increase with this apparatus, this apparatus is a like-for-like fire engine, so this will maintain continuity. So it's really the same fire engines that our firefighters are riding around on right now, operating on. The information used to inform the cost estimate for the new fire engine for the lift at Station 2 in 2025 was based on a market analysis and the cost of fire engines previously purchased by the city. We just purchased 2 fire trucks a couple years ago, so that was our base pricing with inflation that we used to inform the costing. However, as you can see, the cost and time to build fire trucks has sharply increased. Some of the market forces driving the cost of fire apparatus include supply chain issues, inflation, increased demand, and new emission standards. Specifically, the Environmental Protection Agency is implementing the Clean Trucks Act. There's also an America Rescue Plan where American fire departments have access to grant money, which is increasing the cost and demand. Global industrialization, fire trucks in international markets are booming. So as global markets develop more, they're looking for more modern fire equipment. So that's putting greater demands on the greater fire apparatus market. Material costs, we saw steel tariffs applied in 2018, and unfortunately they were taken off, but we never saw the subsequent cost decrease. So COVID, supply chain, labor demands, coupled with the surge in orders. Orders actually went down at the beginning of 2020, and in 2022 they've seen a marked increase. So just matching that with material costs, labor, it's put a lot of pressure on the market. Natural disasters we talked about in December. We had Hurricane Ian, which puts additional pressure on the market because those fire trucks that were damaged or need to be replaced or have to be replaced, they go to the front of the queue. So all these pressures on top of the framework that we have to replace our fire trucks in is the Fire Underwriter Survey. So that framework compels us to replace our fire trucks at frontline 15 years, and then they'll go into reserve status for another 5 years afterwards. So similarly, peer departments that have recently purchased or are in the market for frontline fire engines, such as Vancouver, Saanich, Delta, are similarly experiencing increased costs and delivery times. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Rudolph, I'm seeing a hand on my screen. Did you have a comment? No, okay. So I understand there's no motion required today. This is simply an information report on the well-known effects of inflation, which is affecting your department along with everybody else. Are there any questions, though, from Council to Chief Doyle on this? Councillor Perino, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a question through you to Fire Chief Doyle. I'm just, it's unfortunate the price has gone up, no surprise. However, we're going to be taking it from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve Fund. So my only question is, will both 23 and 24 costs go from that fund? Yes, excellent news. And when does the truck arrive?
The trucks are scheduled to arrive in January of 2025. Through the process, the manufacturer that we awarded the trucks, through your chair to Councilor Perino,
Okay.
the manufacturer that we awarded the contract to has assured us they can arrive in January to align with our fire master plan, which is really it's a good development, especially considering the long waits for fire apparatus that are in the 30 high 30 months, sometimes in the low 40 months. So to get them here in a little bit under 2 years is a good accomplishment.
Wow. And I'm so thrilled that the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve Fund can handle the extra costs. So that's great. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. Also about the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, I'm sorry, I'm foggy on this. The truck initially was not purchased out of that reserve, is that correct? It's a top-up? Oh, I'm seeing, yes.
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, yes. That was when we brought this to council back in the fall. That was the original funding source.
The additional resources. Yes. Okay. My curiosity is that often when we have a pressure point for funding, we were given the pressure point, and then where do you want to pull the funds from? I don't know that I've seen a report saying we're going to use strategic infrastructure funds for this without council approval before. I might be foggy on that, but I fully support it. I feel like this whole agenda is about inflation, and this is no exception. Yeah, no question there, just a comment. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and I see no other questions on this topic. Chief Doyle, yes, go ahead.
Through your chair to Councillor, through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, this truck came in over budget. Or over the estimate. The other two actually came in a little bit under. So, although this one is, it's put inflationary pressures. The other ones came in quite accurately, which is also a good development. So.
All right. No other questions. Thanks, Chief Doyle.
Thank you.
And I see the next topic also relates to fire and fire stations, but it's going to be introduced by Mr. Sims, the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works, and it's to do with Fire Station Number 2 Sprung Structure Project. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. So, as you're probably aware, the fire station project for Fire Station 1 purchased a temporary apparatus space so that the fire department could remain operational while the old station was torn down. So that structure was purchased as opposed to leased, so it could be reused. The cost to project, the Fire Station 1 project, was about the same whether it was leased or purchased. Therefore, we took the option to purchase with the intent of using it somewhere else in the organization. So the most appropriate use really is for fire apparatus storage, so weatherproof storage for spare or what's the word you just used?
Through your chair, reserve. Through your reserve apparatus.
Thank you. And so the most appropriate location is at Fire Station 2 on the site of the Vancouver Island Emergency Response Training Facility. So there's a project that we've developed in concept to pour a concrete pad and service and re-erect the sprung structure at that location. So we propose to add a project to the 2024 capital plan, and in order to be ready for the project to be built next year in 2024 to receive some of the reserve apparatus that the fire department will receive in 25, we'd like to get started on all of the design work and the permitting work this year. And so we're recommending that $100,000 be used from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve to fund that design work. be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
Special Initiatives Reserve.
Any questions of Mr. Sims or Chief Doyle on this topic, Council? Councillor Geselbrock, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I was just curious if not the sprung structure, were there any ideas of where to store the apparatus?
Chair, to Councillor Geselbrook. This will just, so as part of the master plan, adding the 20 firefighters this August and then adding another 20 firefighters in January, it's compelling us to really maximize our square footage. So we're really going to be pressed on space in our existing 4 stations. We can fit everyone in, but it will put us right at the limit of our capacity. So that being said, and we're also adding a new fire apparatus in 2025. The rescue pumper that is going into the system, as well as the ladder that's going in the system, are replacements. So the trucks that they're replacing would theoretically be sold, and so there's not an increase in space there. But we do have another apparatus coming into our system. On top of that, just the equipment to house and operator there is going to be, it's going to put pressures on our existing infrastructure. So by re-erecting the sprung structure at Station 2, we can store reserve apparatus as well as equipment. So we could just get our apparatus into all the stations right now. This will just give us a little bit extra space for overflow of equipment and apparatus.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Geselbrock. So just for the benefit of viewers, I'll read the recommendation, and that is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council add a project for $100,000 funded from the Special Initiatives Reserve to the 2023 to 2027 final financial plan to complete design and permitting for the Fire Station Number 2 sprung structure project. Is there somebody prepared to make that motion? Councillor Perino, seconded by Councillor Hemmons. Thank you. Any other discussion? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thanks very much. Your Worship, I tried to get us through to the final item, but I didn't quite make it.
Better to have tried than lost than never tried at all, Councillor Thorpe.
So
Thank you.
we are on F.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. F, Albert and 4th Street and Utility Upgrade Project. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning.
Mr. Stewart.
I've asked Mr. Stewart to join me in case there's detailed questions about the project. But just briefly, the purpose of the report is twofold, actually. One of them is to request an increase in the budget for the Albert Street, Albert and 4th infrastructure project. We have a solid bid, and with contingency built in, we need the additional funding to meet that. The proposed funding is essentially from the Water Asset Management Reserve and the Water DCC Contingency Fund, as well as some funding allocated from the Active Transportation Grant. So that's the second purpose of this report, is to announce and to inform the committee that UBCM and the province have awarded the city the maximum Active Transportation Grant for this particular project, which helps allow for connectivity improvements on this stretch of Albert Street. The scope of the project is largely focused.
Okay. Mr. Sims, Councillor Armstrong's got her hand
I'm sorry.
already, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is this the second increase you've come back to council for on this particular project?
Your Worship, that is correct. There was an earlier increase towards the end of last year when the project was put on the street for tender. We were anticipating the pricing to come in a little higher, and so we asked for that budget increase at that time.
So would that be close to $2 million if this project is over from the initial tender?
What was,
Mr. Stewart?
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, the budget adjustment from 2022 to 2023 was about $800,000, and this one is about just under $600,000. So we're at $1.4 million. above the original estimate. It wasn't tendered before, so this is the first market pricing that we have on this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you, Worship. The essentials of the project are really around replacing the water main along Albert, increasing a loop of water main servicing around on Pine Street as well. And the existing Cat Stream culvert where Albert crosses is starting to, thank you, is beyond its capacity, especially considering climate change, and so the project is to replace it with a fish-friendly culvert. And this also allows the opportunity with the active transportation funding to improve pedestrian and cycling access along this stretch of Albert Street. So breaking down the total revised budget of 4.4 million, 2.2 million is directly towards the underground utilities, 1.3 million towards roadworks, retaining walls, and street lighting, and 0.9 million, less than $1 million, towards sidewalks and separated cycle lanes. Be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. I never thought I'd be saying this, but given the dramatic increases in the cost of construction, I'm almost pleased that the amount being asked for isn't as substantial as it might be for other projects. And I'm beginning to be incredibly even more grateful as each passing day from the province for the province's 16.1 million, which they dropped in our laps the other week. As we're looking at these costs for what I will call the basics, there's no offense, this is not this and what's happening in Departure Bay with the next report. These are all necessary projects. Questions? No questions? Any comments? None? Councillor Perino?
Just to say, Your Worship, that I think my new favorite words are reserve funds. And I'm just so impressed that our staff are able to pull money from areas so that we don't have to necessarily increase taxes to get this project done, because it's obviously necessary. So thank you so much. It's a great report.
Would you care to make the recommended motion?
So moved.
We have a seconder. Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Armstrong, you're opposed? No, you're in favor. Thank you. The next is the Departure Bay Road Water and Sewer Project. Again, Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Worship. And it is striking how inflation is impacting many of our projects, and of course we're very mindful of that. And as with the previous project, this being funded significantly with the grant is a big help in ameliorating that inflation. This particular project along Departure Bay is a growth-driven development cost charge project. So it's been on the books for quite a while. It's about a half a kilometer of sewer main upgrade along Departure Bay Road, just above Hammond Bay. And this is also an opportunity to replace a brittle water main, asbestos cement water main. And so we're taking advantage of the project to do that as well. The construction costing here is such that an additional $471,000 is required. And then again, this is from user fee funded reserves. And that it does allow for a contingency in the project. So any contingency that is unused at the end of the project, of course, goes back to reserves. Your Worship, this is an opportunity just to flag some pressures that staff are seeing on particularly sewer DCC funds. With the large amount of growth sort of dispersed all over the city, there's a number of sewer DCC projects that are feeling the pressure. So we need to upgrade sewers to allow for this growth. And the structure of the DCC bylaw stretches the construction of the sewers out over a long period of time. So it's just a flag and just something that we're watching carefully and concerned about, and we'll probably be back in front of council in the not too distant future just to talk about some strategies to address this. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Any questions? Seeing none, someone make the recommended motion. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Manley. Any discussion?
If I may.
Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, not a question specific to this project, Mr. Sims. and Mr. Rudolph, but just in general, as we're noting, inflation is dramatically affecting all of our projects, and Councillor Perino has quite correctly applauded the fact that we have healthy reserves. But looking ahead, we can't always have the assurance that we'll have such healthy reserves, and I'm concerned about forecasting future projects and these inflationary factors. So I'm assuming our competent staff are taking these things into account and also looking at revenue streams for the city to help replenish our reserves. So that's just a general comment type question, but I'd be interested if you have any response or thoughts.
Mr. Sims.
Your Worship, I've got a few, Mr. Rudolph or Ms. Mercer may I wish to add to that. Certainly, staff intend to be in front of council in the next several months with an asset management update, and that may dictate the funding of future reserves to take some of these sort of spikes out of it. I think we're very conscious of the dramatic increase. You know, a lot of these prices were put in less than a year ago, and we felt confident at that. We had some contingency built in, and then we're still coming in over budget. It's quite discouraging. It's very difficult to pin down. And so going forward, it sort of shakes your confidence in how do the estimates look for next year. So we certainly are looking at strategies for dealing with that, and you know, what's within the affordable limits or the willingness to pay for utilities projects. So those are all things that are very top of mind.
Yeah, thanks very much, because certainly I'm a fan of maintaining healthy reserves, and I think we just need to be very much aware of the growing need to draw upon them, and how can we replenish them. I think Mr. Rudolph had a comment.
Thank you, if I may, through the chair. Well, reserves are often funded by taxation to begin with, so it's not as if it's money that's funded from some source. I would say, and this is a theme that we should be, will come up through some of the other topics today, is our fiscal resiliency as a municipality, and the need to understand the dynamics that are going on and being cautious and careful. I think council's always doing that. So we are planning on bringing forward a DCC review project that's in the, I think Mr. Sims was talking about that earlier. So that's something that needs to come forward to council, and there'll be a process around that, and they can explain at that time what that's all about and what are some of the challenges. I think Mr. Harding is going to be bringing in going into alternate funding sources and looking at our fiscal toolbox. A fees and charges review and user pay philosophy, that needs to be a conversation. We're proposing to bring that to the April Finance and Audit Committee. Another topic that's on the ready to go to council when the time permits is a review of the subject of sponsorship. All municipalities are looking at this, and that's another small but somewhat unique funding source for the municipality that we could garner some money. I think there's been talk in the past about creating a stormwater utility as a fiscal management tool, and there will be debate about that and how that unfolds, but the idea is to create a utility similar to water and sewer that enables the municipality to have more definitive funding sources and allocation. So that's a major project, and it'll take several years to do to get that sorted out if it goes forward. So I would say that's something on the horizon. And then back to the capital. So what we're seeing is a need to be, and we're going to see this in the carry forwards to some extent in the report today, some deferrals of projects are probably wise, and we've seen that happen over the past year or two. But there's some projects we can't defer. We you know, it's like the water main project was deemed to be so risky not to do it, that, and the consequences of failure, if there were more breaks, that we just have to push forward. So there's going to be some discussion around that, I think. And so council has asked for conversation opportunities around the capital. We're bringing some of that to you in the next meeting, the special meeting we're proposing for the 29th of March on some of the bigger capital and funding. So I think there's a lot of fiscal conversations that council should be having, and we're in a good position right now, and I think the idea is to maintain our good fiscal standing. We need to use the monies like the 16 million and the surplus and those types of things in a very prudent way, and in a measured way to utilize those funds. So that's a very long answer, but there's a lot of pieces to this. And I think we'll see some evidence of that in your questions, perhaps, with some of these as additional reports today. So, I think it's just the beginning of a conversation, to be honest.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify some of the things you said, Mr. Corson, about, so this, we're getting development cost charges as we increase urban density, and then we're having to increase the capacity of sewer mains and water mains in other parts of the city. So the development cost charges aren't meeting that need, I imagine. They're not, like, we're putting those into a reserve for these kind of upgrades. This upgrade is connecting with our force main, I guess, on Hammond Bay Road? No? So,
Your Worship, this is just a trunk main that drains the area up Departure Bay Road.
okay.
So briefly on the DCC, so the last DCC bylaw was adopted in 2018. So prices being what they are, those are probably low for one thing. That's one of the pressures that the DCC fund is experiencing. And the other is just the way it's structured, the way it's required to be structured is that we have a starting point and say a 40-year end point. So it assumes that you're collecting the DCCs over the entire life of that. When it comes to sewer, you kind of have to front end load it, so you need to build all your DCC projects in the first 15 or 20 years, so to allow growth for the balance. So that's the other pressure that we're experiencing with DCC projects.
So you're planning for growth with these kind of projects?
Yeah.
As you're doing other road repairs and other infrastructure repairs?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No further discussion or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is property tax due dates. Ms. Mercer, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So as you know, the city must adopt a property tax rate bylaw before May 15th per the community charter. And under the municipal tax regulation, the city must charge a 10% penalty on any outstanding current year tax balance after that date. So over the last 3 years, council has chosen to extend the tax penalty dates for all properties to provide some relief to taxpayers as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So for 2023, staff are recommending that council keep the same split as we had in 2022 to continue some of this relief effort. And that's keeping the due date at the first business day in July, which is July 4th, and charge a 2% penalty on anything outstanding as at July 4th, and charge the remaining 8% on August 31st. We don't anticipate any financial impact to the budget for this. Based on the last 3 years, cash flow should be fine. And the only risk we have is if more taxpayers pay before the due date, we will just have less penalty revenues. So that is what is being recommended. So if I'll take any questions or discussion you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So how many citizens do you find, or percentage would you say of our citizens are not able to pay on time?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, it has been consistent throughout COVID as well. So the majority, I would say, off the top of my head, I think it's about 5% of taxpayers don't pay within the due date. And it's been pretty consistent over a number of years.
And do we have any long-term options for those taxpayers that are struggling? Okay.
Nope.
Okay. And it was just a comment, Your Worship, through to Ms. Mercer. It was interesting to me in the options that you talked about the disadvantages that could potentially be a tax penalty revenue shortfall. I've never seen it termed quite that way. So you actually account for that as well.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. In the report here, it says any current year unpaid tax, including unclaimed homeowner grant amounts, are subject to the penalty after the due date. So if people haven't claimed their homeowner grant they're going to get hit with that penalty on that grant, whether they're eligible for it or not?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Right. So good incentive to get your taxes in and
Claim your homeowner
claim
grant.
your
It is treated like a payment.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other speakers. It's a perfectly reasonable motion. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Mercer. And you've got the next one as well, which is the Growing Communities Fund report. Please.
So as you know, on March 3rd, the province announced that the city would be receiving $16,088,000 under the Growing Communities Fund. And this fund is a one-time grant to fund communities' infrastructure and amenities demands. So late yesterday, the province published the specific details on what the funds could be spent on. And staff will be returning with a report with recommendations on how to allocate these funds. We haven't had a lot of time to look at what the rules are around it. So we will come back, most likely in April. And if the committee has any direction that you would like to give us, staff can incorporate that into our recommendations as well and into the report. So we're happy to take any feedback or discussion you have around this money. And I'm not sure if Mr. Rudolph has anything to add to that or not, but that's kind of a brief in a nutshell of what we know right now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious for staff's process for delivering the recommendations. Is it going to be, are we expecting tight parameters for the funding, or are we looking at projects that are over budget, or are we working with strategy? What's going to inform that, please?
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, I would say it's a mix of everything. So there will be some, right now, the departments are looking at projects that they would put forward. Ms. Fulla and I are going through our kind of financial side of things to see what we would recommend. Some of it would be what's in budget, and we're flipping out funding sources, or maybe more strategic projects come in. So it's a little bit of a mix of everything.
If I may, could I request that it comes back to us as a list of options rather than we identify 1, 2, and 3 projects?
Yeah.
Some choice in it would be great.
Your Worship, if I may, I was anticipating that we would be presenting that exactly. I've actually asked for that myself from the departments. What are candidate projects, large and small, that you could put? And so there's a series of options for council, really, that at the end of the day. Staff may have some recommendations based on needs and so forth, and budget. It moves. You could be getting into new projects. You could be dealing with things that are not currently funded. You could be dealing with accelerating projects further ahead. You could be looking for a sort of a reserve that protects you for overages in the future on certain types of projects. You could earmark. You could go down. There's different bundles of things. So I would suspect that our job is to give you a suite of those candidate options, and it would be your choice to decide how that money and when that money gets spent. I think there's a rule of it has to be spent within 5 years. So it would be within the window of this 5 years. So we do have a lot of shovel-ready projects out there, and if we want to allocate some of the funds to that. So it's really give council a full suite of options on that, and I think staff will have some recommendations too in that, maybe for reserves and that type of thing. So we just weren't, any feedback in terms of areas of interest in particular that council would like to see explored, and that was a good suggestion, by the way. And this sort of aligns back with some of the conversation you've had with strategic planning. Where are those areas that you're interested in? And I've heard some things around culture. We've heard certain things around walkability, livability, all those types of things. So any feedback or questions or suggestions where you're interested in some more information on those types of things, either today or through the course of the next few weeks, we'd be pleased to receive them and incorporate them into the documentation.
Thank you. If I may, just in response to that, my preference, I'd like to see all the projects that are over budget and also a focus on strategy. We just had a big strategic conversation, and I think this is a really interesting opportunity that we should wrestle with. But first and foremost, what are we over budget on? Thank you.
Thank you. In order, Councillors Prino and then Gesselbrock.
Couple of questions through your worship to Ms. Mercer. When do we receive the funds, or how do we receive? Do we get like a lump sum check of 16,888,000 or whatever the exact amount is?
Yep. Through the chair to Councillor Perino, it will be a lump sum payment, and it will be received before the end of this month.
So the good news about this is, I'm just thinking back to some of my former businesses where you put the money in the bank and earn the extra interest. So I was anxious to hear, because I know you work very hard to make sure that we get the best investments going, so that 16 million may become more. So.
And there is a requirement that we have to put the money in a statutory reserve that earns interest. And
Excellent.
We have to pay it back over the 5 years, as Mr. Rudolph said, and we have to report on it in our financial statements.
So once again, when do we expect the check to come?
By March 31st.
By March 31st, okay. So you're going to hate me for this question. Is there any opportunity to use some of it towards a tax reduction? It may not be available given what the government requirements are?
Yes,
okay.
That is correct. We will look at options that could fund things that would be like things that could have, say, debt payments on them that would have an impact on taxes in future years. We will look at those.
Excellent.
But based on the criteria that we have seen, that is not an option.
Good response. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I'm just having trouble finding it. I might have missed it, but is land acquisition part allowed in the funding parameters?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock. Land is allowable based on what I've read in the information from the province. However, there is a little bit of a gray question about can you buy the land, but if you don't plan on doing the project within those 5 years, is that still an allowable expense? So we're ferreting out some of the details on that. But yes, my understanding is land is allowable.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questions. Thank you, Ms. Mercer, for the report. Much appreciated. The next is item J, the FCM Green Municipal Fund Community Builders Retrofit Program. Again, Ms. Mercer.
It's me for the rest of the show. So this program helps optimize the energy performance and reduce GHG emissions for community buildings owned by municipalities and not-for-profit organizations. There are many streams under this program, and the city would like to submit an application under the GHG Reduction Pathway Feasibility Study stream for a facilities feasibility study. So the expected cost of this program or this project is $250,000. The grant would provide up to $200,000 in funding, and the city would need to fund the remaining $50,000. So the project is not currently in the 2022 to 2020 or 2023 to 2027 financial plan, and in order for it to go forward, it is contingent on a successful grant application. So staff are looking for council to direct staff to submit the application, commit to funding the $50,000 not covered by the grant, and acknowledge that if we were successful with this grant application, no other applications to this program could be made by the city.
Councillor Manley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So when you say that no other applications would be eligible, how long of a term is that? Is this an ongoing program for this emissions reduction?
Through the chair to Councillor Manley, I believe this is an ongoing program, but you are only allowed one submission. So if we were one successful submission. So if we were successful in getting this grant, we would not be able to apply again.
Ever?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Unless they come out with some change to that rule.
Okay, and we don't have any capital projects in the works that we could be using this kind of funding for?
This is the only one that has been put forward. So.
Okay.
to my knowledge.
Any other questions for Ms. Mercer? Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thanks. Yeah, just similar along the line. I guess, like, you know, I think this is great, and you know, if we can get $200,000 for this type of study, it's excellent. I'm just curious about the other program, if anybody is able to answer here, is the GHG pathway retrofit capital projects. I think maybe that's what Councillor Manley was speaking to, but is that like for like a city capital project, say if we're building a new building, there'd be a grant and a loan that could cover some of the additional costs?
Through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock. Yes, that is the intent. They try to put together a suite of options for folks to look at to access the funding. We look through, our facilities look through the various categories that they had, and there was a number of constraints on that capital project funding stream. The biggest one being that the grant portion is intended to cover the interest associated with the loan. So it's not actually as favorable from a funding standpoint, and looking at the other options available, it was not as shovel-ready as the GHG reduction.
Okay, great, yeah, thank you.
If there's no further questions, there is a recommended motion. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Eastmere. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Carrying on with Ms. Mercer's busy morning, it's the UBCM Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Fund. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you. So this funding stream is designed to support eligible applicants in reducing risk from future disasters due to natural hazards and climate-related risks. So the city has submitted a joint application with the Snuneymuxw First Nation to fund a hazard risk and vulnerability assessment and risk mapping project. The city has applied under Category 1 to provide for foundational activities, and this provides up to a maximum of $150,000 in funding. And the grant deadline was February 24th, which we have submitted, but we could pull it if council didn't support it. And an announcement is expected by June 24th. So again, like the last one, the project is not currently in the 2023 to 2027 financial plan. And to move forward, it is contingent on a successful grant application. So staff are looking for a council resolution in support of the application and a commitment to staff providing the overall grant management.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, a question through to staff. Ms. Mercer, you used the term foundational activities. Can you just tell me, just give me an idea about what foundational activities are?
I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Lloyd, who actually did the application or was part of the application, to answer that.
Thanks. Through the chair to the councillor. Yes, so the grant has 3 categories, and the first one is foundational activities, and that's really to understand risk. So risk mapping, risk assessments, and planning are aligned with what we're trying to achieve through the HRVA application. And that's really to understand our risk profile for the community. So what kind of hazards could impact us, how vulnerable we are to those hazards, and through that we get a calculation of risk. And that's really the point of the study, is to understand the risk profile better for the city, so that we can direct the program activities and direct our efforts towards the most significant risks that we faced.
Another question, if I may, Your Worship. Is this the first time that we've done this type of
So this
program?
so through the chair to the councillor, this is a renewal of our 2014 HRVA.
Okay.
So we had one done in 2014. That's almost 10 years ago.
Yes, time.
So it's been quite a while. And if you look at that report, I think there's a lot to improve. So yeah,
Okay.
I think.
So if we don't get the grant funding, then we wouldn't move forward with that. Is that correct? Okay, it's a mouthful. UBCM Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Fund. Wow, there's no acronym for that one. Thank you so much.
Any further questions? If not, would someone care to move the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Manley, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is item L, 2022 budget carry forwards. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you. So at the end of each year, a review is done of all operating and capital projects. And this review identifies what projects are almost complete, are still a work in progress, or have been delayed and will need to be continued into the following year. So there are many reasons why projects are carried forward, and some of them are in our control, as if we, you know, an emergency project comes up and we stop one project to fund another, that's in our control, and some of them are not. So market capacity, supply chain issues, inflation, weather, all of those kind of things are outside of our control, but do impact our ability to complete a project. And these all contribute to the need for carry forwards. So for 2022, we've identified $86.5 million in carry forwards. And these projects will be added to the final 2023 to 2027 financial plan that we will be bringing to you next month at the April Finance and Audit Committee meeting. So 70% of the total is projects that are work in progress. So that's just a little over 60.1 million. And the report does highlight some of the larger carry forwarded projects, of which many are a work in progress. So these 10 projects account for more than half of the total carry forward balance. And you see them, they're listed here on the screen. The biggest being the Midtown Water Supply and Utility Upgrade Project. 29% are delayed or not started at just a little over $24.5 million, and 1% is substantially complete at about $830,000. So this carry forwarded total is approximately 57% of the total 2022 budget of $151 million. So this report and the attachment provide the committee with a summary of all the projects that are being carried forward to 2023 and are broken down by department and type. So department staff are here to answer any questions you have about carry forwards.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mercer. Councillor Hemmons, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious specifically about the Marie Davidson Bike Park, and if I can have an update as to why that's been delayed.
I'm not sure if Mr. Harding or Ms. Davis are.
We lost our crew. Okay.
Yeah, but I do know that there is some, I believe there was some, Mr. Harding is online.
Mr. Harding's online.
Sorry there, I just walked away from the computer. I missed the question.
Good morning, Richard. I'm curious about the Marie Davidson Bike Park delay. Why the delay and when we might see it picked up again?
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillor Hammonds. So the delay is really around the design, and again, the design and then cost. So what we thought would cost one thing a couple of years ago is definitely a different world now. So we're working with the organization to look at the design again, see if we can get it to a point where we can either fit it within this budget or come back to council and with a rebudgeting for the 2024. In addition to it, we were hoping to have some more in-kind contributions towards the project. And I think we need to work on that because I know the community would participate in this if they could, if they realized some of the things that they could add to it. So we'll have a little bit of time on that too to see if we can find some support in the community in the past, particularly with Marie Davidson. One of the reasons it's named after her, she was able to get that built. It's a lot of community input and contribution. So that's the main delay again is a bit of confusion on the design, but also it's just definitely going to cost more. If we went out for now with the tender, we know we'd be well over what we have funded for.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just going to confirm that we connect with our community groups that we're working with on these projects. Is that accurate? I just want to make sure that the MX Club, who is very excited about this, is aware that this has been delayed and that it's going to be pushed back a year and why, et cetera.
Your Worship, again, to Councillor Hammonds, yes, they have been advised along the way with this, and reaching out to them again now for this year, because there still is a chance that we could go out, but we'd have to adjust the design. So we're still working with them on potential what to do this year. if it's still a chance to do it, we'd have to change the design parameters of and the scope of the work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you. This just goes back to the previous conversation about the new grant from the province. I would like to see that, obviously we've approved all these projects, that obviously they're going to be overrun, that those dollars be go towards this. So just for future reference for that report that Mr. Rudolph was mentioning.
Thank you. I was just going to inquire, relative to other years, are we falling behind, getting ahead of the game? Are we delaying more projects than historically the case? Just, I'm looking for a general comment, not something terribly specific, but I'm just curious to know.
Yes, so this year is the highest carry forward we'd have in the years that since 2015. But, you know, the Midtown Water Supply Project is a large project. But, you know, it's strategically, some things have been delayed for cost balances or cost overruns, or so it's a little bit, it's hard sometimes to compare, but this is the highest year that we have had for carry forwards.
Appreciate that, and I think Mr. Sims wants to add something. Please, Mr. Sims.
Your Worship, I think we had a look at, and you've heard all of the reasons for certain delays. As Ms. Mercer pointed out, the Midtown Water Supply was a big lump that shifted a little bit in time last year, so we didn't spend it as quickly, if I can use those terms. But if you look at the top 5 or 6 projects, we're, you know, in the $40 million range, which puts us down about our average carry forwards from years past. So those top ones were delayed, you know, for various reasons. And just the simple example of $3.5 million for fleet units, we're seeing 18 to 20 months for delivery of a simple pickup truck nowadays. So that, anyways, the point is we're not far off if we take those into consideration. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to staff. First of all, I think it's an excellent report. I thought it was great. It's just very detailed. I just wondered about, so our RCMP officers that we are still in the process of hiring, and of course the fire department, where would they, are they under administration, under human resources? Is that what that's part of?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, these are just operating and capital projects. So
Okay.
operations is separate, and the RCMP contract falls under operations.
Okay.
So, and in the next report, we'll talk a bit about the RCMP.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If no further questions for Mr. Sims and Ms. Mercer, thank you very much. The next item is M 2022 surplus allocation. It's not a bad topic to discuss. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. So at the end of 2022, the city had an $8.9 million surplus from our 3 operating funds. So we had surplus in the general fund of $8.5 million, $224,000 in the sewer fund, and $198,000 in the water fund. The report does list some of the larger drivers of each of these surpluses. And for the RCMP, or sorry, for general, the RCMP contract was our biggest variance, and we had just a smidge under $3 million surplus for the RCMP contract. So there were many member vacancies that the detachment is trying to fill, and therefore the project or the contract came in under budget. The next largest driver was wages and benefits at just over 2.9 million. And again, there were many vacancies throughout the city, and that contributed to surplus as well. And the city is unlike any other, segment of the economy right now where we're struggling to fill positions, find people to fill positions, and that's the driver there. Our interest income was higher by almost $2.4 million, and that the unprecedented rate increases over the last year have contributed to this, and we've received a much higher return than we had anticipated. Our building permit revenue is higher by $598,000, and due to a delay in the startup of the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, $407,000 in unspent budget contributed to surplus. So on the flip side, we did have to record a contaminated sites liability for a property we acquired through tax sale. And under accounting rules, we are required to record a liability and for our contamination remediation. So that is an accounting standard that we have to account for in our financial statements for any property that's not in use. So that kind of offset some of the increases. For the sewer fund, most of the increase related to higher than anticipated user rate or user fee revenues and wages and benefits. And the water fund, the majority of that surplus came from wages and benefits, unfilled positions. So the report also outlines what staff are recommending that the surplus be allocated to. So for the general fund, we're recommending that $3 million goes to the RCMP contract reserve. So the reserve balance at the end of December 2022 was just a little over $1.5 million. However, we do have an outstanding commitment of $1.4 million relating to the police operations building renovations that has yet to be spent. And so that would bring the balance in this reserve to just over $100,000. So as the reserve has a minimum balance of $1.6 million to cover any contract overruns, $1.5 million will be needed to be allocated from surplus to bring this reserve up to its minimum balance. We're recommending another $1.5 million of the RCMP contract surplus to be allocated to the reserve to fund any retroactive pay that may result when a new labor contract is settled. And the current labor contract ends at the end of March, I believe. So what we saw when they settled the last time, it took a very long time to reach a settlement, and then we were short funds even after what they told us to accrue. So we do know that we will likely need more money and felt that it was prudent to put some excess money into this reserve. $130,000 is recommended to go to the Snow and Ice Control Reserve. So this reserve has a minimum target balance of $1,330,000 to cover any budget overruns. So we need an additional $130,000 to be allocated from surplus to bring this to its minimum balance. $2.3 million is recommended to go to the Special Initiatives Reserve, and this allocation is needed to fund the new accounting standard for the city's asset retirement obligation liability, and the city is mandated to record any legal obligation associated with retiring an asset. So if you had asbestos remediation, that kind of thing, we are required to record a liability. So based on the assessment of our buildings, we anticipated this funding to be needed to fund that liability. $2.1 million is recommended to be allocated to the Property Acquisition Reserve, and this will give council additional funds to purchase land in the future. So there have been many land purchases over the last few years, and the reserves have been drawn down. And so this will help replenish those reserves and give council opportunity for future land purchases. And the remaining balance of $1,014,855 is recommended to go to the General Capital Reserve. So this is a general operating reserve, and its primary purpose is to fund capital projects. And this will provide council with the greatest flexibility to fund unexpected or strategic projects that may come up in the future. And as we've talked about today, with the price increases we are currently seeing, these funds could be used to help cover those shortfalls when they come up. The sewer fund, historically, we have allocated the entire surplus to the sewer reserve. And for the water fund, again, historically, we allocate the entire surplus to the water reserve. And so staff are looking for the committee to approve the allocation to surplus as outlined in the report, or provide us with some feedback, and we're happy to take any questions you may have on this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I'm curious about the asset retirement obligations, and had we always intended to take that out of the Special Initiatives Reserve?
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons. So right now, we are taking money from surplus to put it into the Special Initiatives Reserve as a holding spot until we record that liability. So that is it. Because this is for a very specific purpose, that's why we've put it there.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, to Ms. Mercer. Thank you very much for the report. I certainly agree with your recommendations, but I do have a question, and please forgive me if it's not an intelligent one. Wages and benefits. Nearly $3 million. Now, I'm assuming that these were positions that council had approved and that we are still trying to fill. And if that is a correct assumption, then eventually we're going to hopefully fill those positions and need that $3 million. So would we not be considering putting that funding into a separate reserve for these future potential hires?
So through the chair to Councillor Thorpe, each year, all the positions are funded in the budget. So this is, so for any position that we didn't have filled in 2022, we now have, starting in 2023, we have a new full year worth of budget for that position. So, we're not short any funding for funding positions. We are absolutely going out and trying to fill all of these positions because we do need them. Some are ones that council just approved this year, and some are vacancies that happen through retirement and whatnot. So it's a real mix of what the vacancies are a result of. Wages and benefits surplus goes just into the general pot, and each year we budget for it. We wouldn't necessarily recommend funding, taking surplus to fund future year operations, because then eventually you have to fund it fully through taxes at some point, and you will be getting a hit on increasing taxes later.
Right, and that was my concern.
Yep.
Thanks for your expertise and the information.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. In order, Councillors Gesselbrock and Armstrong, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I just trying to understand the asset retirement obligations. Is it so basically for like each building that we have, or each whatever type of asset that is going to have a cost when it comes to end of life, we need to have that budgeted for in our financial plan?
I'll let Mr. Bailey answer that because he has been knee-deep in this topic.
So through the chair to Councillor Gesselbrock. So the asset retirement obligation standard, I've talked to council about that a couple times this year through the quarterly reporting process, but it's been a big project for 2 years. It's a fairly large PSAB accounting standard, and so we're required to look at all of basically any environmental standards that could impact facilities in terms of removing asbestos, lead paint comes into play, any kind of future obligations that we know that are legal that we have to deal with at some point in time. So it's not talking about, demolishing, not like asset management where we have to maybe demolish a facility and plan for that. That's separate. This is just legal obligations around contaminants. We have, underground fuel tank. That's one that there's a substantial, it's a burden at the end of its life that we have to clean it up properly. There's standards around that. So basically what we have to do in 2023 in our financial statements, we have to record a liability and we have to fund that. So we have to have that money set aside to pay for that now, and then at the end of, when a facility maybe does get demolished or we do remediate the contamination, that's been paid for already. So that would fund that later obligation that we have.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up, do we has a number, is it like do we do a survey of everything and then we get a number, like we could get a number in 2023 of what our unfunded liabilities are for these standards that need to be met? And then, like, do we have that number?
We do. So we're still not completely finalized. We have till the end of 2023 to nail that number. Mr. Weatherby in HR has been excellent in doing all of basically going facility to facility, doing asbestos testing, doing lead paint testing. We have had some consultants come and do some analysis on a few of our facilities to kind of prove our numbers. At the end of the day, it's an estimate, and it's a one-time hit in 2023 in setting up these assets. And then in the future, we're basically required to increase this liability for the passage of time. So there will be an accretion expense each year that we have to charge through our statements, and that's an operational cost moving forward. So the capital part is just a one-time implementing the standard in 2023, and that's where that 2.3 million estimate comes in.
And that 2.3 is what the estimate is at roughly right now, or is it just?
It's a hair higher. We have some contingency built into that, but that's what we're recommending. We piggy bank now to bring in that standard at the end of 2020.
Okay, great. So that's what covers. It's not like 17 million, and we're just slowly building up there. Okay, great. No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. My question goes back to the RCMP reserve. I know that they're back in contract negotiations with their third round of the government plan for April. Are we putting aside money again for the projected increase, or have we been notified what the projected salary increase will be?
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, we have, at this point, we have not been advised of what we should put forward for an accrual this year. That's why we're recommending putting an additional $1.5 million into the RCMP contract reserve to start to cover any potential shortfall we have.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm just concerned because I know that they're going to be looking at staffing levels, and I compared ourselves to Victoria, which is pretty comparable. And Victoria has 70 more police officers than Nanaimo. So rest assured, we're probably going to be looking at a significant increase in the requirements to up our staffing levels. So I'm just concerned that we're not putting enough away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, comments. Someone care to move the recommended motion? Move Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Discussion, anyone? Not seeing any. I just want to say thank you to staff this morning, Ms. Mercer's department, for dealing with all the dough. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no other business. I'm going to assume there's nothing on the question period sheet. So if I may, just thank you again to all of staff for attending this morning and providing advice and assistance to council as always. Motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Gesselbrock, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.